Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame, aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having two stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting two stripes on his shirt, so this time he went for the full outfit including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes, the only part of her that isn't rimlit that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other two humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, FNAF 1 Bonnie, FNAF 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up, Baby and the puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now, and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite considering how many he survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green. And I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates through the company a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael possessed Glamrock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. The Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one, and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below. Then it's in Blondie. We do see a new character on this poster, one that we have seemingly never seen before, and it's the little blonde girl who's holding the flashlight that's illuminating the entire scene. She's like the only source of light, but we see nothing about her. Yeah, it's kind of weird. She's short, seemingly blonde, even though she's in black and white, and is wearing light-up Skechers because she's an absolute girl boss on her way to the mall. But also, she's presumably going to be our player character, given that she is front and center in the poster. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is an entirely different concept, but I had a wild idea that could have explained it. I don't know. The pigtails, reminiscent of Baby. Okay, this girl has blonde hair like Elizabeth, and while we might not be able to see her face, she could also have green eyes. Because again, we can't see her face. But also, like, anyone with blonde hair in this series makes me think of Elizabeth instantly. Because, you know, she gets grabbed by Baby in '83, pigtails, blonde hair. I don't know, it seems like there's a lot that's kind of nudging us towards that conclusion. And also, given that we've made comparisons for, like, Gregory to Crying Child, it feels like this blonde girl who is seemingly looking for Gregory could be Elizabeth, you know? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, yes, they don't look alike, I get that, but also we've only seen Elizabeth Afton in 8-bit minigames, and we also have only seen a black and white back view of this girl, so we can't we only really have the hair to go off of. But also, like, look at the lights on her Skechers, alright? They're red and purple. And I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple in this series and it hasn't been an indication of an Afton being present, alright? Plus, the red is like Vanny's eyes, or like Baby's everything. In at 9, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin, and whether that will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the Pizzaplex is unknown, but based off the poster, it's at least going to be the Pizzaplex, but it also could be both. Because like the Pizzaplex does look absolutely destroyed, and I mean it makes sense. There was a freaking earthquake sinkhole thing that opened up beneath it. The Freddy statue in the lobby is in pieces. There's plenty of rubble all over the ground. We can actually like see the walls next to the escalators are pretty banged up. So yeah, it's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby's gonna look. It is an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, and there are liberties that are going to be taken. Plus, this poster was released like a year ago. But again, I don't know. They could design the damage around this, or they could have like taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate the screenshot and add some stuff in. I don't know. It's entirely possible, but given that this is supposed to be released this year, I doubt that they had stuff made properly for it last year. And honestly, they might even still be working on it at this point, because we all know that it's gonna get delayed. And also, if you are looking forward to the Ruin DLC and want to know more about it, be sure you hit subscribe. We'll be letting you know things as soon as we know. So, yeah. And at 8, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from earlier FNAF games, and I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2 and like just FNAF 2. But you can actually see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This to me seems to indicate that we're actually going to have to save Gregory, or the plot of this is going to be us looking for him after the collapse at the Pizzaplex, because we know that they survive. We see Gregory and Freddy sitting on a hill in the final shot after the true ending, meaning that if we do end up trying to save him, our player character might die in the process. This also means that we are not going to be playing as Gregory, but I talked about that earlier. We're probably going to be playing as the blonde girl. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory possibly being a robot, which is a theory about this girl as well, that she is a Elizabeth human robot, kind of like Charlie from the novels, and that so is Vanny and Vanessa, and yeah, it's a whole other confusing thing that I'm not going to get into in this. But I don't know. I have no idea if that's speculation or if that's actually like has some standing, but who knows. And at 7, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it's not going to ruin my wallet, especially when the main game, oddly enough, still ruined me because it cost $50 and was more broken than Skyrim upon release. Yeah, and that was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, and I was basically broke at that point, and you know what? I still am. I should probably go back to buying those meals. But anyways, I'm glad that the DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from the DLC. I don't know. It's an attempted apology from Steel Wool to say, like, we know the game was busted and unfinished when it originally came out, so here you go. Here is a DLC for free. But like, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigs. Okay, that was bigger than Skyrim. For God's sakes. That was like the same file size and maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5, which is insane. Now it's around 62 gigs uncompressed, which is nice, 41 compressed, but still, like, goddamn, that's a lot for a game that didn't really have much going on when you think about it. And at 6, Busted Chica. Like, yeah, my main girl Chica makes an appearance on the poster, but she's showing up as like the most resilient animatronic of the bunch, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building fall on her, and then still having the motivation to keep her smoking hot Kim K-bod. Some of it is removed and cracked. She's missing bits. Her face is seemingly melted too. She's lost the lower half of her left arm. Her left, not your left. Remember that? That's a callback. But also, she also lost her right leg warmer, which is kind of weird, but you know what? I'll warm your leg, baby. I will, alright? At least you're not Monty, who was like literally chopped in half, so. Yeah. Halfway through, into number 5, the FNAF ARG. This was brought up in a recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people are starting to suggest that it's going to be involved in this DLC. The basic idea that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released part of it in the Felix the Shark Book 12. However, I'm here to tell you guys that it's not real, okay? Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wants to keep the two worlds separate, probably because FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he wouldn't really make a real FNAF location, okay? He stuck to this so hard that he didn't even make a website for the indie game dev introduced in FNAF VR like he wanted to, because he thought that it would be too fuzzy for the line, okay? So, look. There is no FNAF ARG, okay? If a website is too much, there is no bigger quest here. Last time we thought this, there was a restaurant that got harassed, and a pizzeria owner who just so happened to be named Mike also got harassed. So please, don't go out searching. If there was an ARG, I'm sure Scott would have said something about it, okay? So don't harass anyone, just stick to the games and the game files. Crack open FNAF 3's mobile game if you want to see if there's the image there. Just leave the real world locations and people alone. In it for simulation. It's also worth mentioning that there are multiple instances on the poster that feel unfinished. Now, I don't know if this was because the poster was rushed, which has seemingly been a trend with FNAF recently, or because they're simply mistakes, but I wanted to point out in case it has bigger implications. Like when I mentioned the last time we talked about this, the floor at the bottom actually cuts off, but the rocks on top of the floor don't. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening had mostly faded into black, but the rock was still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see the clear divide between the tile and just pure black. You can also see that on the left, the floor does the same. And this is very clear in the original poster, okay? I mean, like, there's even a glowing rock sitting at the border. Oh, it's like glowing because it has reflecting light on it, but it also kind of reminds me of when an item is important, so it's highlighted in the game even if it makes it unrealistic. But the most interesting part in my eyes is the tree on the far right. The one in the back next to the escalator. The bottom two sections of it are blank, like they're just filled in with a black outline and then solid brown color. Like the artist had finished the color blocking and then forgot to finish the tree despite doing the rest of that tree. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if it is, then could this be pointing to the entire thing being a simulation? Which would then bring up the question of how and who. Like maybe this is what Vanny is seeing in her head while Glitchtrap was taken over, so that she's still like the good guy in her head, so she's not fighting back against Glitchtrap's control. Or maybe it's Gregory still caught in his dream that started in 1983. Getting close to the end and in number 3, Prisoner. Now time to get to some theories about our blondie in the middle. Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention that she looked an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who ended up going missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that point. So the most realistic answer I have is that the missing children weren't actually dead, but they were rather trapped inside the building somewhere. Much like how Vanny in the very first trailer for the game said, "Gregory, your friends are here with me."
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, right? Which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, this is a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who, thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex, managed to escape containment. But ultimately, in at number 2, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, this one is a bit wild, but hear me out. I also mentioned last time how both of these kids look like Aftons. Gregory is very clearly meant to at least be an allegory for crying child, okay? The stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it was right there in our faces. Whether you believe he is a robot or not, he is at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in black and white, she is still very clearly blonde. She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth ends up possessing. She's wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing in the one time we see her in Sister Location. I mean, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, I think this is more than enough. And then, look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them, which is very clearly meant to have our attention. And then those lights are purple and red. Purple very clearly representing William Afton, and while last time I said that the red could be Vanny, Baby is absolutely covered in red. From the clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Or it could be that this girl is evil, just like how Elizabeth always wants to impress her father. Just saying. It's not the craziest thing this series would have done. Okay, it would have been, okay, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Or again, they could have just been taken because they look like the kids. And finally, in at number 1, time travel. This one is crazy, I will admit, and it's most definitely not the case, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? Where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason. And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria that was simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying that time travel has already been established, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future or something. There are actually two key indicators that point in this direction, at least in my mind. The therapy disc, where the therapist calls client 46 out on the lies about their home life, and the fact that when he leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in the tape says that 46, which I'm still certain is Gregory, has a great home life, but what they told their previous therapist was a lie. But if that is the case and his home life is great, despite saying his parents and him suffered some form of tragedy, how is it that he sleeps in a cardboard box? Like, his home life is great, but he sleeps in a box. Because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, which would mean that this girl could be Gregory's sister who came back to save him when he didn't return. Or he could be lying and instead using the name of someone he knows is a missing child in the future, which is why he can't go home. Or why the therapist describes him as writing down his past as if it was a story. Because it is a story, just not his. Last time I came to the conclusion that this mysterious girl is one of this round's missing children that got possessed by Elizabeth. And while I do still firmly believe that, this got me thinking, who else could it possibly be? We asked you loyal subscribers on a community post, and the overwhelming conclusion was that the majority of you are wrong. Okay, just kidding. A lot of you though seem to think that this could be Vanessa as a ghost. And despite the fact that Vanny's eyes are on the poster, I think that you might actually be onto something. So let's talk about it. Although I just need to put this out there, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, okay? Susie has been dead for a very long time when this game takes place, being dead over 50 years or so, and while that doesn't really matter in the context of FNAF, there's still no way it could be. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we release Susie's spirit in the Happiest Day minigame. Some assume that this takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true, considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that's when FNAF 3 is over and we get the good ending. So to me, that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place around the time of FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria from FNAF 6 didn't have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released, because they had already been dealt with. So in regards to this theory, the first thing I need to disprove is that it's impossible, since Vanny's eyes are in the corner. But just because we see some faded eyes, it doesn't mean that a spirit cannot be separate from a body. I mean, look at Afton, for example. This man was code that possessed a human while his body was stuck in an underground pizzeria. So there is a precedent for their body being around without their soul. The issue in my mind comes around when we see that since Vanny's eyes are glowing, her body is operational, which kinda shoots this theory between the eyes until you remember that there are multiple things possessing Vanny's body. One version of Glitchtrap's code and then Vanessa herself. So we can go one of two ways with this now. The fact that Vanny's body may solely be Glitchtrap now, or the fact that Glitchtrap is still operating in Vanessa, but Burntrap is also Afton. He's back as Afton, okay? Either way, there are two versions of Afton in operation right now. One of them is coded and the other is possibly not, but we can't really be sure. And William isn't the only person to have a coded version. I mean, remember Princess Quest? The game designed to keep Vanessa at bay while William wreaks havoc as Vanny? I mean, the Princess Quest ending, otherwise known as the best ending, is the only ending to have 3 stars. It had some significance, but what? It's a question we've been asking ever since Security Breach ended. Another one is what happened to the Princess Quest game machines located around the Pizzaplex. It seems reasonable that at the very least the one in Roxy's salon was destroyed, and if the Pizzaplex is in ruins, then the others must have been destroyed too, right? Well, if that is the case, what happens to Vanessa's spirit? Like, is it released, or does it fade away into nothing? It's not fading away, not with unfinished business still afoot. The spirit of Vanessa had to go somewhere, but where could it go? Well, this could be some random girl that Vanessa just grabbed off the street or that was walking by, or it could still be one of the missing children that was trapped in the building. Either way, whoever they are, it's really of little consequence if this is really Vanessa possessing them. Okay, the only thing that matters in this context is that Vanessa's possessing them, not who the kid is, I'm guessing. The precedent is set in this universe where one person can possess multiple things if one version that is possessing something is coded and the other is a spirit. So, this is definitely possible. The character on the poster is also actually completely grayscale, aside from the rim lighting thanks to her flashlight and the color of her lights on the shoes that she's wearing. These are also colored purple and red, colors that in this game specifically are linked to William because it's purple. I mean, I can't even wear a shirt on this channel now without being called the purple guy. So yeah, purple equals Afton, Burn Trap, William, whatever. And then Vanny with her giant glowing red eyes are also on this poster, okay? It's like they wanted us to make this connection. But if they wanted us to make the connection, does that mean that this is all intentional, or is it mostly just a red herring or MacGuffin to keep us away from the real story? That's for you to debate in the comments. In a 10, save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the ruin poster and the save them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on the screen, at least to me, indicates that what we will have to do is save Gregory from whatever situation that he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make it to that hill that he sits on in the true ending, in the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene in this case is just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. That could also just be because it's the true ending and it's canon, but it's currently unclear. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful, but it's possible that our character, whoever she is, will die in the process. I could also be drawing weird connections between things that aren't really linked, but that's always possible when theory crafting, at literally any point, so. In at 9, Robot Gregory. This poster, in my eyes, also helps prove further that Gregory is in fact a robot, since after all we get confirmation that Vanny messes up the cameras, as you can see from the two screens that have Vanny on them. They're both glitching out. This is further supported by our last point, because how would Gregory be able to add a help me sign to a screen without being able to access the cameras? Nowhere on our fast watch does it say that we can add text, and Freddy clearly doesn't have the ability since he would have used it during the section where we have to open the doors for him so that we can then be a sussy baka and vent, instead of just, you know, standing there and waving. He could have had text flashing up on screen so that we can see him easily. Multiple people I watched play this had difficulty with this section, okay? Freddy just flashing some text on screen saying I'm here, especially when the player takes a while, would have established that he had this power, but they didn't. So unless they want to somehow retcon that in, it has to be that Gregory's controlling it. Most likely because he's a robot and he can just, like, tap into the cameras. And it ain't no more Freddy. There is also a possibility that Freddy is destroyed, or that he won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the pizza plexus collapse. I mean, after all, the collapse did destroy Chica, right? So why couldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but like I said, that could be a dream or a heaven of sorts, or it could be years after the actual ending of the game. We can't really be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be omitting Freddy and he won't make an appearance for whatever reason, hence why the statue is destroyed. I mean, like, look at it. This thing is in pieces, but why? There isn't much rubble around it, and the escalator walls are way less damaged than this, so why would the statue have been so heavily damaged if there was nothing that actually hit it? Seems a bit sus if you ask me. And it's 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline it will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, but how long after the true ending is the question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems that it could be later on, and the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game means that it could be linear in the timeline sense, so it could also take place 2 years after the ending. But that would then bring on the question of why is Gregory back there if it's a year or two later? But then we also have to ask who is this girl and where they came from if we're really going to know this answer. So while there are theories, this one specifically coming from Amanda because of the release date, we still don't know for sure until we we have some more information. Time to wait another 6 months before another teaser. And at 6, Chica Graffiti. While zooming in on Chica, like I always do, I did notice that her torso seems to have traces of red on it. Now, what this is in reality is definitely unclear, but it could be graffiti, indicating that this could be later on in the timeline. She could have been decommissioned for a while after being revived for whatever purpose, and maybe some kids got to her and decided to spray paint her. Or, more likely, it's actually pizza sauce. See, brightening the image while basic FNAF at this point is also still helpful, and I used it in the last Ruins video. However, while the red is evident on the normal poster, by brightening you can actually see that there is yellow dripping from Chica's face. And unless Chica started listening to Bear Grylls in order to survive the collapse of the Pizzaplex, I'm pretty sure that it's melted cheese dripping from her mouth, which would also explain the red in tandem. I mean, it could be her beak, but like, we were trying to explain the red, so cheese makes sense. Like I said, it would mean that the red stuff would then be pizza sauce and potentially pepperoni or some other form of meat that the Pizzaplex kitchen would add on pizza. But it could also be blood. Not sure from who, but maybe Chica saved Vanny's life or something. Also, I was at Niagara Comic-Con 2 days ago, and there was a girl dressed as Chica. Didn't know who I was. It was kind of offensive. It was really humbling.
Number 5, Ghost. Another theory is that Burntrap looks the way he does because he is not actually physical, but simply appears to be physical, and that he is in essence some kind of ghost. This theory seems a lot more flimsy to me because I do think Burntrap exists fully on the physical plane, but it would at least allow us to explain why and how this form could still possibly exist. If Burntrap was a ghost, you would think he'd appear as, whatever form he most identifies with, and he could even maybe alter his appearance himself. Perhaps it is his sins that make him take the form of Burntrap, and it was simply his soul that was transferred from the digital world to the physical world, and when he takes control of other animatronics, it is not really through as much as code as like a spiritual possession, which he uses to hack their systems in a more supernatural way. This would also explain why Burntrap is the only antagonist in the game in Security Breach to not have his own jump scare. He isn't physically there, so he obviously can't jump scare you directly. Number 4, Vanny's repairs. When it comes to that one missing arm and where it came from, there are a lot of fans that have simply explained this by pointing to Vanny. Vanny in Security Breach appears to have been working for William Afton via glitch trap, and in so doing also managed to recover his original body and fix it up. The weirdest thing about that theory is if Vanny was taking parts from the Pizzaplex to fix up Burntrap, why wouldn't she do more for him? I mean, replacing his arm, that's pretty nice, but what about the rest of him? What about his jaw? What about everything? Burntrap is in a pretty dismal state when it comes to his appearance, and so you'd think she'd do more than just that if she was making repairs. So that's where this theory kind of falls apart for me, but I will say I think it's one of the most logical ones we have in regards to Burntrap's appearance in Security Breach. Number 3, possession. I believe that Burntrap could return in the DLC Rune and control of the Blob animatronic that we see at the end of Security Breach. While the Blob initially seemed to be intent on attacking Burntrap and either incidentally or intentionally saving Glamrock, Freddy, and Gregory, this doesn't mean that the Blob won that fight. We don't know what happened next, and it is possible that in the end, Burntrap actually won this fight, managing to take control of the Blob as it was attempting to do with the other animatronics. Now, just because the Blob is a mangled kind of mess doesn't mean that it might not be susceptible to, being hacked and overtaken by Afton's spirit or programming, so it's possible. Number 2, Amalgamated. On the other hand, it is possible that Burntrap will appear in the DLC as kind of a new part of the Blob, a new addition, if you will. It would be interesting to see how this might change or affect the Blob's personality. The Blob could then become more antagonistic in the DLC as a result, or perhaps William could be, redeemed in some way by becoming a part of it. Maybe he'd finally get a sense for his victims' suffering and he'd actually feel something about that. If his victims are the Blob, like I think they might be. Though, how that makes sense after Pizzeria Simulator, I don't really know. Or perhaps the Blob would just devour Burntrap's soul if amalgamated, and William Afton would effectively be erased from existence. Finally, actually defeated. I doubt it, but we can't completely rule it out. And I can still dream. Number 1, not appearing. A scary thought for sure, in the sense that I feel like a game without some kind of Afton presence feels weird. Even when Afton hasn't been directly appearing in a game, his presence is usually felt there in some way, usually as a result of his actions, which have created other antagonists for us to face. The idea of Burntrap not appearing at all, it's a pretty scary thought for that reason. However, this could also just be a DLC where Burntrap himself does not appear, but where, of course, Afton's presence is still somehow felt. I'd be more interested in that actually than him just straight up making another antagonistic appearance again. What else is there for us to explore and find in these ruins? Could some of Burntrap's other victims or experiments be lying in wait for us to face?
Now first, your instinct may be that this is impossible, okay? And honestly, that was my first instinct too. I mean, Susie's been dead since like 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free and happy as a day. So like, how is it even remotely possible? Well, some say that the happiest day minigame that sets Susie free really takes place at the very end of the timeline, no matter when that ends up being, meaning that at the time of Security Breach, none of the original 5 animatronics have actually been released. Which means that if we go off the fact that this girl is possessed, this is entirely possible. I mean, Susie is the first of the missing children, and definitely seemingly the most important one, given the fact that we see her as a kid in the Fruity Maze minigame's reflection. And I mean, even if the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, it's just a blown out version of her face. But the puppet is present for the happiest day minigame, and they get released in FNAF 6, right? There's one key detail, however, that really makes me unsure. Something that's been in the back of my brain for a while, but it may make a few people mad because it involves using the novels. In the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are injected with Remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if Remnant does indeed contain part of the soul instead of just being metal that once had a soul, the original 5, despite being set free in happiest day, no matter when it takes place, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, I guess. Which could also explain why Molten Freddy had to show up along with Scrap Baby, also known as Elizabeth, in FNAF 6, unless we just assume that there was a slight bit of Elizabeth remaining in Ennard after she left, or if we assume that Henry wanted to get rid of all traces of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or all things that Afton created, which at that point also included his son. That's a lot of assumptions. So without assuming anything, but also while using the books to get some further context, which some people don't like, it is possible that after they burned in FNAF 6, much like Afton, Susie's spirit was set loose. Not free, like it didn't move on, but it was just loose in the atmosphere, willing to grab onto whatever it could. Or that it merged into the blob, and then the fire that Gregory causes that caused the cave-in ended up setting her soul loose again, and then she possessed a person. I don't think that there is really any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems fundamentally impossible. So whoever this is, if she is a character we've already met prior to this game, she would have to be possessed. Unless this is an entirely new character, which is absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone that's already established, obviously, but I mean, it's fun to speculate and theorize nonetheless. Another indication that I've seen a few people point out is that Chica does actually also appear on this poster, which is certainly an interesting choice. I mean, she was certainly the most popular enemy animatronic in this game, and the other animatronics are very out of commission even before the collapse. I mean, Roxy couldn't see and Monty was split in two. But since we can't really take anything in FNAF at first glance, is this actually meant to indicate the identity of our mystery girl? It's certainly a possibility. I mean, the only ones who really know are Steelwool, Scott, and whoever made the poster. But given Chica's state, I'm guessing that this is just meant to indicate a timeline, that this occurs after the collapse rather than at some other time prior to the game starting, and then maybe they rebuild the Pizzaplex, or maybe even long after it ends. Because I mean, look at her, okay? Chica has got to be probably one of the most resilient animatronics in the group, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building land on top of her, and she still has most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed, some of it was cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted, possibly due to the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe it's just because like a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed, and then she thought that it was just really hot pizza. I don't know. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that. I've made that mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing on her midriff and right arm is gone, but other than that, she is still fairly intact. Her endoskeleton is, at the very least, especially compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone spilt frosting all over her face. Yeah, I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But other than that, there aren't really any connections between her and Susie. Probably the most resilient animatronic in the group because, again, she's still kicking. Susie was possessing the yellow Chica, so I feel like this Chica being white is meant to show us that this is not going to be like the same sort of situation. So I don't think that relating this Chica to that Chica or this Chica to Susie is really logical in this case. I think it's a bad idea, okay? No, I guarantee you that this is not going to be Susie, and if it is, I'm going to quit FNAF. Look, yes, she's blonde, and yes, Susie was blonde, but she was also blonde in 1985, okay? It's been like 50 years since the missing children's incident in the games, and the original Chica animatronic was destroyed, and Susie's spirit was released, okay? Happiest Day does not take place at the end of the timeline. The pigtails on this girl are very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair, and while we may not be able to see her face, I feel like it is possible that she does have green eyes, okay? Because anyone with blonde hair instantly makes me think of Elizabeth Afton, not Susie. Since Elizabeth has more impact to the story than Susie, and even in the books, Baby ends up having more of an impact thanks to the Afton amalgam. And considering the blob that got introduced in this game is very much similar to that amalgam, this still makes the most sense to me, okay? But I figured that I'd go through the possibilities in separate videos just for good measure, okay? I'm not sure. Who do you think this little girl is, alright? Do you think it's Elizabeth's spirit? Do you think it's Vanessa's spirit? Do you think it's Susie's spirit? Or just some random stupid kid who wandered into a house of horror? Be sure you let me know down below. I'm still adamant on Elizabeth, but I don't know, maybe it's just a stupid kid. And honestly, you know what, if it's a stupid kid, they deserve it.
Number 10, will return. This theory is based on some pretty strong facts if you ask me. After all, Burntrap is William Afton, who at this point has come back multiple times from the brink of death and beyond. While Burntrap was defeated at the end of the Afton ending, having been seemingly attacked and defeated by the Blob, this does not mean that he is in fact dead. We know William Afton well enough at this point to theorize that he likely won't stay dead and may even return. I mean, he's done it before, and this time around we almost believed that he wouldn't, and we fell for that and we were wrong. That Vanny would actually just carry on his name and he'd be completely gone. But considering that Vanny seems to have been a one and done villain kinda, unless she too is somehow a villain who can be like redeemed or killed and then return from that, I am seriously doubtful we'll ever get anyone to replace William long term. So I kind of expect to see him in the DLC. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming and you love it when we talk FNAF, check out our FNAF playlist. We have lots of FNAF content for you. Number 9, Return to Classic. Isn't it interesting that they didn't decide to give Burntrap a completely new look? I feel like this may have actually been done intentionally, not just because William was content to occupy his old, completely scrappy and burnt up body, but because the game creators wanted to hint at a return to the classic era of Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that this could be a sign that not only will we see more Burntrap, or perhaps a less tarnished version of William Afton, but we will also see some of the classic animatronics reappear, perhaps with the next game to follow Security Breach being set earlier in the timeline. I feel like there are still so many places throughout the timeline that we have yet to explore or see or visit, so I personally would be here for a game that takes us back to an earlier event or perhaps even location. Number 8, not Scrap Trap. This theory comes from the fact that Burntrap actually has his arm replaced in the game. Interesting. Now, last we saw William Afton would be Pizzeria Simulator, where he was believed to have been Scrap Trap, or at least the last time we saw him physically in person. Scrap Trap seemed like an even more worn version of Springtrap, and can basically be found in the game out in the alley. It's one of the animatronics you can salvage in this game. However, Scrap Trap was pretty much completely missing an arm, whereas Burn Trap, of course, has both arms. And if Scrap Trap is supposed to have been Burn Trap, I mean, how is Burn Trap even alive, or unalive, or whatever he is? I mean, Scrap Trap got burned up pretty bad, and all the animatronics were implied to have died there. So how would this body still be functional at all? And I know what you're thinking, you know, Glitch Trap was technically the last time we saw William Afton in the games with Help Wanted, but even that doesn't make Burn Trap's existence make any more sense, because it doesn't explain the state of Burn Trap's body or why we're continuing to see it used. If this was the original Springtrap, Scrap Trap form, obviously, which, I mean, it might not be because there might have been some weird stuff there. Speaking of weird stuff, Number 7, the meta. Going off of that theory, another theory that some have is that Scrap Trap was never even really real. Yeah, this is kind of more of a Scrap Trap theory, I guess, but as it was sort of in part created because of the existence of Burn Trap, I feel like we can include it on our list. Some believe that Pizzeria Simulator isn't even part of the canon in the same way as the other games, and that it is more like Help Wanted, kind of a sort of metagame that is supposed to exist within the universe of FNAF itself. Number 6, needs organic body. Assuming that Burn Trap's body is the same one as possibly Scrap Trap and definitely Spring Trap, and before that originally the Spring Bonnie suit, or perhaps I guess I should say originally in part William Afton, it could stand to reason that the why behind Afton returning to this old and tarnished form is because he actually needs his physical, organic, human body for something. Perhaps he needs to remain connected to it to even be able to move into the physical plane from the digital world, or perhaps he is intending to resurrect his human form. But an explanation given in regards to why he physically appears the way he does in Security Breach could simply be that this is the form he needs to take for one reason or another. Now, the reasoning, of course, behind the need is a little more unclear for me, but I'd believe it if it was revealed that William had some kind of plans for his human corpse. It just sounds like a William thing.
I went through it at number 5, 2023. As I said earlier, the DLC is releasing this year, or at least as of last year it was supposed to be. I hope. I really hope. It might not be, but you know what? If it's not, then I have another 8 months to film DLC content. And milk that thing dry before it comes out, and we can actually then like rehydrate the cow, or kind of like shift the cows out and then actually have something with substance to milk. But I don't know. It would be, I don't know when it's going to come out. It's like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q5, who knows? I have no idea when it is going to come out this year. We haven't heard a word of it since the poster dropped in May or March of last year. We're almost coming up to a year mark. Come on, Steel Wool, can we get a second poster for crying out loud? Please, for the love of God, I need something. I am working off of pixels of leaked set images for the FNAF movie. I need something, please. And for eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may not be robotic, well, I mean, they might be, but there's another set on the poster that I actually want to point out. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. That's right. Yeah, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused, let me explain why they're Vannies. The eyes are red, which we only see Vanny have, really, since Burn Trap's eyes glow purple and the animatronic eyes don't glow. But we also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, so she could have known about it beforehand, because like psychic connection, whatever, virus thing, whatever is going on. But also because she was able to get onto the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending, and we were like right at the door. too. So yeah, I mean, she gets pushed off by Freddy after she's up there, but she still somehow knew to be up there before us. So yeah, I'm pretty sure she'd have found a way around a sinkhole collapsing. Plus, if she's watching the security cameras, then she's going to know that something's wrong and she'll be able to get out of there in a hurry. Plus, again, red eyes, and they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in the first poster appearance when she showed up as the shadow. Getting close to the end of number 3, brightness. As always, the first thing you do whenever you get a new FNAF promo image is you brighten it and you you mess with the contrast, you mess with the levels. You don't throw it into MS Paint, you actually do it properly, and then maybe you hopefully find some secrets. And I did this, and the first thing I noticed were that there aren't any actual question marks on this poster, thank God. But there's quite a few things that did get revealed. Firstly, there are 2 windows up at the top of the poster instead of the one that shows up on the original. These windows are also kind of like angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain, which I guess it would be William, but also could be someone else like Baby. They also, like I said, have a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, although that could be an anomaly. Since it's very faint, it is not nearly as clear as Vanny's eyes. But I also see that the girl in the middle has no color on her aside from the lights on her shoes. She's black and white. Totally. So yeah, maybe that's because he didn't want to give anything away, because, you know, clothing color at this point is the only leads we have to go off of, but who knows. Penultimately, in number 2, collapse. One of the big questions we, or the very least I, have after Security Breach is what part of the Pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air as to whether it was like the entire Pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway, but this poster and title confirms that the Pizzaplex is in ruin. The whole place is destroyed. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is messed up, there's rubble everywhere, and of course there are still going to be some questions. It's an illustration, but yeah, how is the rest of the Pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What is the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may be answered thanks to other details, like possibly looking for Gregory, I don't think that we'll have any answers for a while yet. It's supposed to come out this year. Doubt it's gonna happen. They're probably focusing on the FNAF movie, but also it's Steel Wool, so they might be able to get it out in time, but I can't be sure. Alright, I'll believe it when I see it. And finally, in at number 1, Vanny Cam. We also see 6 monitor screens on this poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory across them. I talked about the Gregory one earlier, but across these 6 monitors there are 4 different images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above it having like different images. One is of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at a security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image, kind of, that's like blurry. You know, the one where it's like, it's like that, but Vanny. And I think that it's actually one of Scott's clever tricks here, because it's like kind of how he used the sister location keypad to tell us that Crying Child was bit in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on the screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, if that is Gregory and not this new blonde girl, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be one, or it could be the other, it could be both. We don't know at this point because it hasn't come out yet and we haven't heard anything since the poster dropped. Damn it, Steel Wool. I'm trying to make content.